So welcome to our little bit of a sort of an extra event here in the Living is Dying program, a particular session dedicated to how does a dementia death look like for a Buddhist practitioner. And we have two special guests that I'd like to warmly welcome. There's Elisabeth Mattis-Namgyel and Ben Isbel. And I think none of these need introduction a whole lot. They're sort of friends of the family, but nevertheless, I'd just like to sort of go over their bio just very briefly. Elisabeth Mattis-Namgyel, she's studied and practiced the Buddha Dharma for 35 years under the guidance of her teacher husband, Ziga Kongtrul Rinpoche. She's a retreat master of Samten Ling in Crestone, Colorado, and she spent over 6 years in retreat. She holds a degree in anthropology and an MA in Buddhist studies. She teaches throughout US, Australia, and Europe. She is the author of The Power of an Open Question and The Buddha's Path to Freedom and The Logic of Faith, the Buddhist path of finding certainty beyond belief and doubt. This is also work that we've studied here in Australia online. Ben Isbel is a mindfulness teacher with over 25 years experience, spanning both the traditions of the Theravada and also the Mahayana. He holds a BA in psychology and also PhD in psychology. So Ben has a lot of experience in working with the aging and has been a program coordinator at the University of Sunshine Coast's Healthy Brain Aging Clinic, where he then presents mindfulness to prevent the development of age-related cognitive decline and dementia in older adults. So I was just saying to Ben, I'm very much looking forward to being in his capable care soon. As a neuroscientist and contemplative researcher, Ben has developed a comprehensive cognitive model of mindfulness and has used advanced EEG techniques to show how mindfulness training can improve cognition and mood in older adults while at the same time transforming the aging brain. So I'm going to spotlight the two of you. Actually, I think you already are spotlight. I'm just going to remove myself and basically hand over this to the two of you. So once again, warmly welcome here. Very happy to have you.
Thanks, Jakob.
Thank you, Jakob.
Yeah, welcome, Elisabeth, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is a real special event for the program.
Thank you, Ben. It's an honor to be here and be part of this bigger conversation, which is a very important one, I think, too.
Yeah, it's something I think that everyone involved in the program who puts these things together has really valued these sort of conversations that I know that you've been a big part of, is talking more openly about aging, death, and dying, in really being honest and sort of with our experience of that and kind of helping others and supporting them through that process. So I guess today our special topic is dementia and dying with dementia, and especially in a Buddhist context and for Buddhist practitioners, and kind of how we can contextualize that, how we can relate to that, and what that experience looks like. And so for those of you who don't know, you, Elisabeth, your mother is currently experiencing dementia, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, and she's in hospice care, yes.
Yeah, she's been in hospice care, oddly, for 2.5 years.
Wow.
My mom is so resilient. It's amazing.
Wow. So I thought, look, over the next hour, we might have a bit of a discussion about, both your own and your mother's involvement with Buddhism and that path, and then this emergence of the journey with dementia with your mother. So I thought if we could start, perhaps, maybe just for those who don't know, I might just outline a little bit about dementia, because some people might not know what that is. And dementia is not really a single disease. It's rather a collection of symptoms that result from abnormal changes in the brain. And these manifest in a way that kind of impairs learning, memory, and cognition in such a way that it kind of interferes with a person's ability to carry out their normal day-to-day activities, functional living, and even caring for themselves. And at that point, we kind of say, okay, this is getting a bit severe, and somebody may receive a diagnosis of dementia. And so Alzheimer's is probably what most people think of as dementia, but Alzheimer's is actually just one type of dementia. It accounts for about 2/3 of cases, but there are other types of dementias. And what sort of dementia does your mother have, if you don't mind me asking, Elisabeth?
We don't really know. And
Yeah.
we just like let her be and didn't pursue it so much.
Yeah. And
We haven't medicated my mom.
wonderful, wonderful. And I'm really, you said two really interesting things there. We don't know what it is. And to be honest, the scientific community doesn't know what it is. So these labels are really only given post hoc, because we don't really have a specific phenotype or a characteristic. It's just a symptom, collection of behaviors and symptoms that we ascribe and put in the category of dementia. And so that's the really interesting thing. The scientific community doesn't know what causes Alzheimer's. And so there's been such a big research effort over the years to try and come up with pharmacological cures, drugs, as you say, and they've got a nearly 100% failure rate. And this shows, this is a really interesting thing, and it's going to really lead nicely into our discussion today about why Buddhist practice is such a potent assistance through this journey. Because over the last, say, 20 years, there's been over 300 large-scale international drug trials for Alzheimer's treatment. And these things have been really effective at kind of curing the underlying neuropathology of the dementia, but have had no impact on the clinical symptoms whatsoever. So this means that there's no treatment or cure, even after these trillions of dollars of research funds that have been spent. So that leaves us in a position where we need to look at management and especially prevention of Alzheimer's and dementias and like that. And this is where now I can start to talk about meditation, mindfulness, and Buddhist practice, because we know that lifestyle factors account for about half our risk of developing a dementia. And in fact, simply adopting healthy lifestyle behaviors could eliminate 1/3 of all cases internationally of dementia. And from amongst these lifestyle factors like healthy eating, exercise, sleep, mindfulness has recently emerged as a very powerful intervention capable of enhancing healthy brain aging, cognition, and mood, and providing a protective benefit against dementia. And that's kind of the field that I've been working in. But that field of mindfulness isn't free of a context. It comes in the context of a Buddhist path for a lot of practitioners. And so that's kind of where I'd like to start this conversation today, is it talking a little bit how your mother became involved in Buddhism and what her journey on that path looked like and what it might have involved.
Yeah, well, my mother, I think my mother became a Buddhist when I was a teenager. It's a long, long time ago, and she just had. She sought after a spiritual life, and she really didn't relax into it until she met Gyaltsen Rinpoche, who is her main teacher. She also studied with Chagdu Rinpoche
Wow.
for many years. So when I was young, these were two teachers who were around quite a bit. And she, even now, Gyaltsen Rinpoche is about 95 years old, and he calls her on a regular basis and talks to her. And it's the sweetest thing that you would ever see, because, well, Rinpoche is very sharp, cognitively. And my mom, I can see that she knows it's him, but she can't really speak anymore. She's in a very, she's had this for quite some time. So she's in the advanced stages of having dementia, but she's very bright. She has like a bright presence. She knows what's going on. And so I can see that it's also very frustrating or sometimes difficult for her when he's there, that she can't speak with him. But he does mantras, and he says, "Don't worry, you're going to be okay." And it's just such a touching situation when he calls. My brother and I are usually there, and it's very moving. And sweet, and he's just so incredibly sweet with her, and poking fun at her and poking fun at us, which she always has done. Anyway, and so she's been around some amazing teachers. Also, spent a lot of time around His Holiness Dundrum Rinpoche and Peino Rinpoche, so some of the great masters. So I think she was. Jakob and I've been talking recently that just sometimes being around these people, it touches your life deeply, and there's something. It leaves some kind of residual blessing, just you don't even have to do anything. You just have to somehow witness someone who's so awake and accomplished. There's so much communication and information that comes from that for a person. So my mom has that, whether she was practicing, like she wasn't like as hardcore like as a daily practitioner, I don't think, but she had some faith in the Dharma for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah. It sounds like she was incredibly fortunate to have come into
Very,
the orbit of these amazing teachers.
very, yeah, very.
Yeah. So what was it like when your mother first started, whether it was your mother or yourself, if, as family members started to notice some changes that might have been the dawn of this kind of experience with dementia? And was that something that your mother then talked about in relation to her practice, or how that might have been integrated or related to in terms of this, like you say, this orbit of these experiences she was having?
Yeah, well, she definitely herself began to see that she was having some cognitive decline. And her mother also had dementia. I think it was diagnosed as Alzheimer's. So we've gone through this before. There's always this concern.
Yeah.
Her sister didn't get it, but she definitely started to forget things in a deeper kind of way. So there's this frustration for her in the beginning. So in a way, she related to it in a very beautiful way. Again, I think I might have told the story in that last teaching that you were at. But anyways, it's a nice story. I think my mom, being aware of what was happening, decided to get rid of a lot of things. And she had me pack up like some of her clothes. And my mom doesn't like to have a lot of things, but she kind of takes good care of whatever she has. I always like that quality of my mom. So we packed up all her things and put them in boxes, and then she said, let's go to the consignment store and drop them off. And we live out in a very rural area, so we have to drive an hour. And then also we made an eye doctor appointment because then we don't have to drive yet again. So we try to take care of everything at once. And this was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
But yeah, your mother had already noticed some changes, and this was part of that process, right?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. So she was still walking. Now my mom doesn't walk or talk, or she can't even use her hands. She's just, but anyways, back then she could. And so we went to the consignment shop, and of course I was, trying to take care of everything and keep track of time. And we brought in the boxes, and we went into this kind of a dark, kind of mildewy smelling room. And I thought, okay, we're just going to drop them off and go. And my mom's moving slowly, ever so slowly. And I was getting, a little tense because of the eye doctor appointment. Anyway, my mom wanted to talk to the lady there, and she started opening the boxes and pulling out items like a pair of shoes, a blouse and some jewelry. And she wanted to tell the story of everything to this
Wonderful.
woman. Yeah, but I was very agitated. I was getting very agitated. It is wonderful. I was just worried about the practicalities of getting.
Sure, you've got a schedule to keep.
Yeah, like the schedule to keep, And then I just got more and more agitated. This is more of a story about me than my mom, but it is about my mom, because that awareness of kind of being ready to give things away. With my dad, he didn't want to get rid of anything. He wanted all of his T-shirts and all of it, But with my mom, she had that maturity to want to give it away. So then at one point she pulled out this dress. And she started to tell the story of this dress. And I recognized this dress. This was the dress that she wore to the Grammy Awards when my dad was in the music business.
Oh, wow.
Hollywood. and she had this dress. It was all like kind of patchworky, but it was very chic. My mom was fairly chic in the way she dressed. But it was not chic now, or maybe it would be kind of retro.
Well, you never know. Comes back.
Yeah, you never know. It's that, kind of 60s, early 70s thing. And anyways, when she pulled that out, I could see like this flood of memories for her,
Lovely.
rushing.
Yeah.
And also for me, like it kind of stopped my mind. And then that whole kind of stress that I was feeling went away, and it was like this kind of dusty, dingy shop. It became like I don't know, I was so touched by there was memory, and there was loss, and there was love, and there was just everything was there in that shop. And this dusty little dirty place became this kind of beautiful sacred realm, like
Yeah, that's
sacred
lovely.
world for us. And so I don't know, I'm saying this because looking back on that, my mom had this kind of awareness to be able to really look and to give away, these aspects that she wasn't going to need anymore. It's very touching for me, to think back on that. You have these moments around these situations that are so precious. And so that happened. And then along with that, then of course my mom was extremely bright, like very intelligent. It's just her. She was so, like, even her hearing, she could hear from very far away. If I
Well,
needed
that's
to
what
say
mothers
something,
do, right?
oh my God, it was just horrible though, because like I go in the other room and to whisper something to my brother, she'd hear the whole thing. Sometimes you need a little privacy. But anyway, she's so sharp and so like, yeah, always kind of taking in what was going on. She still is. This is what I feel.
Yeah.
Um, but to lose, for somebody, I heard when you're really intelligent, to lose that kind of capacity to speak and express and discern, and all of that. The discernment, I think, is still there actually, but she got very agitated sometimes. And my mom has a personality like she's a fighter. I don't know how to explain it. I don't mean it in a negative way, but she fights things. And this became she got very fierce, and she has a lot of kind of pride, which I really came to admire. The fierceness and the pride of my mother came out during this time, as a certain kind of a display of integrity, I feel. She never
Yeah.
gave up her integrity. And, it's hard because, people are taking care of your biological needs and things like that that you can't do as things go on. So this was a struggle, this period of shifting from being cognitively, I'm still not sure. She seems very aware to me, but she cannot express.
Yeah,
That language thing was gone. This was very difficult. So, but it's interesting because there's this raw aspect to even her personality. We have these things, we might call it aggressive, but I don't know. It's this raw, fiery, uh, fighting spirit that she had, that, it can go either way, right? So this was
yeah.
a very difficult period for us because she would fight my brother and fight me. She would fight the caretakers, just fighting all the time. But I came to respect, and I think whether you have dementia or not, this happens because I know with my dad, I don't think he had dementia, but he was a very wild guy, kind of a maverick. He also had connection with the lamas. And I remember when he kept driving and he got dangerous. We live
Oh,
in a small
wow.
town, so we get a lot of feedback from the neighbors and
From the community.
from the community, with the guy, he drove into a ditch, he almost hit so and so's, son. So obviously we had to take the car keys away. And I was so close with my dad, and the first time he ever got angry with me is when I took away his car keys,
Wow.
and he threatened to sue me. He threatened to sue me. And, so dad kind of lost his inhibitions. He was never really that inhibited. But
Yeah.
then, so what he started to do is like, we'd go to his house and we're like, "Where's Dad?" Dad was gone. And he hitchhiked
Oh, wow.
everywhere. So people would pick him up, and people love my dad. He was just very social. The hitchhike, he'd get picked up and he'd go into town. Sometimes he'd just wander around, and it made people really insecure. Some people loved it, and some people felt very insecure, and some people wanted to call social services.
Oh, dear.
And so
Yeah.
we were starting to get a bad reputation. And so, but then I thought, so they started to gossip, and I just said, I'm going to write an article in the paper. So I wrote a article called Freedom to Age. I just looked it up. I hadn't seen it for a long time. Freedom to Age.
That's a lovely title.
Yeah, I thought, like, leave him alone. Let him wander. Like, why can't he wander? And so
Yeah.
why can't we let our elders free, like that? And so he wasn't going to stay still. Anyway, there's
Mm.
nothing we could do. And my brother lived in Brazil for 17 years, and I lived in Asia for many, many years. You see people wandering. They're allowed to be free as an elder. So I asked my community in the paper, I said, how do you support the spirit of, how do we support the spirit of our elders here in this community? And, what can you do to include the elderly, as an asset in your community? And how do you want to grow old? I started asking these questions, and people liked it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to ask, because what we've done, it's probably similar in the US as it is in Australia, where we kind of take people and we put them in a gated community, we take them out of community and isolate them and kind of put them in places where they're disconnected. And, I think there's a lot to be said for, as you say, being more involved, engaged, and free as we age. And there's some European countries, and Denmark's kind of one of them, that's leading the way with how they manage this, where they actually build these facilities that care for older adults with dementia into a community. And also, they're not square boxes, they're actually circular, so that if people wander, they just are free to wander, but they don't get lost anywhere and they don't wander outside. And it's integrated into communities where there's a lot more engagement, because I think we've got to start to look at how this works, because one of the things that you've been talking about is a really interesting phenomenon. Like, we become more who we are a lot of the times as we get older, which is what you're talking about with your parents, right? Your mum became more herself and your dad became more himself. Because this is how our conditioning works, right? Our habits just become stronger. But it sounds like your mother really cultivated and embraced this idea of letting go, even going to the shop and giving all of those clothes away, of letting those go. And as you said, it's a really difficult time once the progress of this disease takes place. I think from what I'm hearing is that process of letting go of all of those things, being not as sharp, not being able to remember things, not being able to care for myself, that continual process of letting go is a very, very interesting one, which I think, if you can place that within a Buddhist context and have cultivated an aspect of letting go and release and surrender almost, I think, maybe you'll be able to speak to this more, Elisabeth, that how your mother kind of integrated that style of thing and how it assisted in that journey.
Yeah, well, it was hard. There was a not letting go, I felt, for a long time. I mean, to be honest, I wonder, why is she still here sometimes? Because she's almost 85 in a couple of weeks. She weighs 65 pounds. I don't know what that is in kilos, like 35
Yeah,
or something.
it's not much.
My mom, I mean, she was always small, but this is like, she's like, there's no meat or there's only like bone.
Yeah, wow.
She's 65 pounds. The hospice people say that she's an anomaly. They just can't understand why she's alive. All they can say is that it might be because she has so much love and care. It's almost, sometimes I tease her. I say, "Mom, it's like you're in a spa." She gets massages all day. She gets like fresh juice, just like it's just constant nutrition. And, I mean, it's palliative care, but still we're giving her good food,
Sure.
very, we're taking good care of her. So, but they're amazed. They just can't even believe it. I mean, they was thinking she was about to go 2 years ago. But, this is how it sometimes is. She has this very strong life force. And she has right now, how with dementia, sometimes because neurologically the muscles start to pull in. She's like, her hands are like this, her
Yeah.
feet are like that. I mean, she's in weird, configurations. And even during the COVID crisis, she got the Delta variant. We all
Wow.
got it. No problem for my mom. She just stopped
Wow.
eating
She's a
for
tough
6
cookie.
days. Oh my God, this woman is, and she was very healthy. I mean, she always ate well, so maybe she has healthy organs and stuff. And sometimes, like, she doesn't watch TV. She's completely alert and kind of alive. Her, a lot of times her cheeks are really pink. She has a beautiful, like, creamy complexion, and at other times she looks gray and almost like she's already gone. It kind
Wow.
of goes back and forth. It's very interesting. But like I said, there's no meds.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting point because, the way this disease works with dementia, I mean, it's an abnormal change in the brain. And so, this neuropathology is affecting the way our brains function, how we can think, how we can process information, how we can put it together, and eventually, even our motor systems, as you say, with our muscles and our limbs. But, an interesting thing is a lot of people die with this advanced pathology in their brain, but don't have these symptoms. And so this is a really interesting phenomenon where we know that it's not just the presence of this abnormal neuropathology, there's something else about it. And this kind of leads into this idea of cognitive reserve, where the more enrichment and intellectual stimulation, social interaction, certainly engagement with things like the Buddhist path, the more we build up over our lifetime, the more we have this reserve where we have a greater capacity to absorb abnormal neuropathology and still function well, to accommodate it, to work around it, as it were. And so there's a few ways that this can happen. One of them is by enhancing how our existing networks are functioning so that they can handle a bit of stress. The other is making new networks completely around that, so we have alternate pathways. So on a cognitive level, you can say we can maintain a lot of these functionalities. And as you said, your mum was really bright. But then I think when you come at this from a Buddhist perspective, then we have to acknowledge that, the level of consciousnesses that depend on the brain physiology, the gross consciousnesses that are obviously affected by changes in that are one thing. But then there's awareness, as you say, that life force that your mother has. And that's something which is not entirely dependent on our human physiology, those changes in the brain. So we can have a certain level of impairment which impacts the content, what we can remember, the names and things, but then that underlying presence of awareness is something that's unimpeded. And it sounds like that's what's very much present with your mother.
Yeah, it seems like that to me. It seems like that to me. And sometimes she has, now this is interesting. Maybe you could tell me something about this. Sometimes, certain times a day, and this could be, what they call sundowning or something, she actually struggles quite a bit. Like she's okay until about 5. And then from 5 to 7, something is really stirred up in her at times. I'm not quite sure what that's about.
Yeah, I don't know much about that myself. I've kind of worked more so on the beginning stages of this, taking people from healthy aging through to then some cognitive impairment, then into beginning of Alzheimer's, leading into it, rather than the later stages. Because as a interventionist, where we can provide a therapy that somebody can then take up and practice, those are the kind of periods where we can kind of feel like we can intervene and make some definite changes. So I don't know much about that, but I guess, from our own experience, when we're able to remember and recognize and, not forget our awareness and presence, then it's fine. But we always get distracted. So, and those times things go a little bit, off the rails.
Yeah. It's been interesting. I think too, when she was when she was able to communicate better, there's some interesting communications that happen.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, I would remind her to breathe, because there are moments when she got, she felt afraid, and she loved it when I reminded her to breathe. So we do, we do breathing together, and then, sometimes talk about the Dharma, but most of the breathing really helped to kind of bring her mind to her breath, because it was, I can't even imagine, it must be scary during those times when you're kind of just losing that ability, to let it go. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to let go of. And,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, losing our sense of who we are, everything we've ever known about ourselves, that's scary for everybody, of course. And when you can have a process that's kind of long and progressive, and you see that taking place, of course, which is why I think this kind of format where we're looking at this from a Buddhist perspective is so helpful, because, if we can in our own practice just in a small way, be able to let go of things in our sessions, in our practice, of let go of our ideas, our hopes, our expectations, our thoughts, our feelings, all of the content that we generally self-identify with, that we kind of construct our sense of self with. We get more and more flexible with that, of relaxing and not being so tied to that. I've got to think that that helps us as we go forward.
Yeah, the more you habituate yourself to that with practice, like my teacher Zigor Kongtrum, she has said, because I've talked to him about this a lot, and he knew my grandma, and is close with my mom. He says, that we're habituating or familiarizing our mind to let go, and to relax in that way, and just developing confidence in the nature. And so in the end, it's almost like I love this one. There's a military axiom that I love. It says, when challenged, you fall to the level of your training.
Yes.
So it becomes your default position. If you practice
Absolutely.
enough and you have a sense of confidence, and you are able to rely on something there's something that doesn't go away. And I can see that in my mom. That's the resting place, right? So
Absolutely.
that's why
Yeah.
we're practicing. That's one of the reasons that we're practicing, is to familiarize our mind with its own nature, I'm in the unconditioned nature, which is unconditioned. So I think it's wonderful. And yeah, I think, from our side, like what's I think helped a lot is that, we've tried not to pathologize or medicalize my mom's condition. Like, we just relate to where she is. And it reminds me very much of, sometimes when I'm teaching the Dharma, not to, we say, don't reify someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
Exactly.
decide that you know who someone is or what a situation is. And this is everybody on my mom's team is like that. Well, my brother, who is my mom's main caretaker, because he lives in the house with her. Bless him, he's an amazing caretaker. And we have two other caretakers who are just incredible and understand this very well. And, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, your poor mom." And we just think that's like the weirdest kind of response to somebody's condition, just where they are, you know?
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and so we don't feel like we're doomed. And one of our caretakers, Allison, she says, uh, there's so many miracles happen in this situation. And it does, when you're open and you're not reifying the situation and thinking, oh, this is bad, oh, this is somebody's process of karmic process of dying, and should be
Yeah.
respected as such. And I think, I realize, like, we're living in this incredibly rural area in the middle of the COVID pandemic, where you can't even get a caretaker. We end up having the two most amazing caretakers in our life. We're like a close family now. So many challenges arise, and then you just keep relating to it, and then you have these gorgeous moments. Like, that's true, my mom can't get up and walk. My mom loved to walk. Walking was her favorite thing to do. We would always be walking. My grandmother also was a walker. And so once, this is just one of those, I'll tell you a couple stories. I don't know. I feel it's so good to maybe hopefully inspire a little bit, so that people don't have to be so fearful. I
Yeah.
guess that's why.
And this is really good, because this is what I wanted to ask you about how your experience what you've learned that can help others in that situation.
Yeah, well, this is one way. This, maybe I'll say, this one thing. Maybe it's very helpful. So when you're not pathologizing, or you're not reifying how things should or shouldn't be, there's a lot of room for magic. Like, I don't want to say magic like it's, like magical thinking, but like, of relating to a situation in an appropriate way, in which something like what happened in the consignment shop happens. Something of beauty, something of meaning,
Yeah. Meaning.
something
There you go. Yeah.
deep meaning for everyone. So once my mom said to me, "Let's go for a walk." That was when my mom couldn't walk, but she could still speak a little bit. So I could tell she really wanted to. I said, "Okay, Mom, where should we go?" And she started thinking, we'll go down the street. And then she started talking about going other places, So I was agreeing with her and I said, what should we bring? So we started to, kind of pack. I wasn't really packing, but we talked about packing things up. Then she says, and we have to bring red. So, whatever that meant to her. So I said, okay, Mom, let's bring red, and I took out something red out of her closet and we just went on this like really amazing walk. Um, and we went. I don't know, and this is like it allows you. We're so limited in the what we think is right or wrong or true or we're so limited. But really, in fact, she also brings me into this beautiful. I want to use the word sadhana.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a Vajrayana group. I kind of remember in the email, I saw the word Vajrayana, but it doesn't matter. Sadhana really means like exertion, a way of exerting yourself in a spiritual way or in order to wake up, So sadhana is like the practice of sacred world. So, it's kind of like you enter into a sadhana.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really like that.
Yeah, I think maybe I should say more. Maybe I could say even a little bit more. I thought about this a little bit because, yeah, when we talk about in the Dharma, um, like even in the sutric tradition, we talk about accumulating merit and wisdom through the relative and absolute bodhicitta. Like the relative bodhicitta is how we create grace through our actions in terms of relating to others, developing a healthy relationship with the world and trying to bring our actions together with our intentions. And then the creating wisdom has to do with not getting fixated. So like you use the word, I think you use the word flexible, like you become
flexibility. Yeah.
yeah, like my mom wants to go for a walk. You don't say, sorry, Mom, but you can't walk anymore. Like you would never say
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
To just relate what serves. And then in the Vajrayana, we have this we call the Cherim and Zokrim, the creation phase and the completion phase, we call it, where we could practice it in a formal way, but we practice it also in the way that we create tendril, positive conditions for something
Sure. Yeah.
to happen. And then also how we can rest our mind in one taste. And I was thinking, is it okay? Can I go with this?
Yeah, please do. This is great. This is exactly what I'd love to talk about.
Okay, yeah, I thought this was very a good way to maybe frame it. And I think we do see it this way in our group, our small care team. So there's the accumulation of merit part. So you come into when it's your shift, you come in and then you wash your hands. It's kind of like a little transition period into this sadhana that you're entering
That's
into.
beautiful.
Yes, we wash our hands and then, kind of everybody, I don't know, I always take a breath and then as a way to enter in and wash my hands. And then, like you have to relate to the physical situation. I mean, there's all this, there's so many skills you have to learn, which, I'm, learned to some extent how to move someone's body so they don't get
it's a big job.
And yeah, how you don't hurt your own back when you do it, and what the kind of how you supplement their diet, have you thicken the drinks so they don't aspirate. I mean, there's so many details, how you take care of their fingernails and their hands and teeth and all of this. And then there's the view that we bring into it that I learned from our caretakers. I'm sure you and also your wife is very familiar. Don't hasten but don't prolong. Like we're not desperately trying to make her live longer, but we're not trying to hasten it either. And we're creating that balance. Like there's so much to think about in relating with the team. So this is all that part of like Cherim, or creating grace, and asking what serves and what is needed in the situation. And then just also the one taste part is so interesting because, you're dealing with, like I say, like all the biological things, and it becomes just kind of very natural. And, you don't get caught in like I was saying, trying to enforce some kind of reason on the other person, or you leave a lot of space for something amazing to happen. I'll tell you, if can I tell you two stories that are
Please do, yeah.
think
Just
super
quickly though, I'd just like to say I just love that idea of you know, using that almost pure perception
yeah.
to not impose our ordinary conceptions of what's good and bad and all the rest of it, but actually letting that, being flexible and letting that go, creating the space to be and connect in that wonderful space. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, I think I think, sometimes we do our sadhana and then we forget just how does that relate to our life,
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
sadhana
done.
yeah, I'm done with that. Now what do I have to do? Kind of like that. But in fact, this is very much exactly like doing it should be a sadhana. If you're
Sure.
a sadhana
Sure.
practitioner, if you're